Well, as I mentioned, it's day two of President Biden's trip to the Middle East, a chance for the president to beg the Saudis to help save him from his own disastrous energy policies and to offer even more concessions to the Iranian regime as he attempts to revive a bad nuclear deal with the world's largest state sponsor of terror. All this while inflation soars here at home and fears of a recession looms. Chris Mitchell is a CBN News Middle East bureau chief. He's in Jerusalem where the president was today, and he joins us now to discuss the president's trip and what's happening there in Israel. Chris, welcome back to the program.
Hey, Tony, it's great to be with you.
Now, I understand you've been following the president. He's been there in Israel. What is the reaction in Israel to President Biden's visit?
Well, Tony, I would say the reaction for the leaders right now, like Yair Lapid or the president of Israel, Isaac Herzog, he just gave Biden just a few hours ago one of the highest honors that you can give to a foreign dignitary, the Medal of Honor. So on the surface, many Israelis have applauded the trip. They're glad that President Biden here. When any U.S. president comes, they certainly recognize the great relationship between Israel and the Jewish state. But there are concerns that people have. One of the concerns will be tomorrow when, for the first time, a U.S. president will go to East Jerusalem. That's not too far from where I'm standing right now. He's going to visit the Augusta Victoria Hospital, but he's not going to allow any Israeli officials to join him. And the concern that people have about that is that it's sort of a de facto recognition that that part of Jerusalem could or maybe would, under a two-state solution, be part of the capital of a Palestinian state. That's one concern. And I think the other major concern, Tony, would be the subject of Iran. You mentioned in your preface about, going or making concessions to the leading state sponsor of terrorism in the world, Iran. Both President Biden and Yair Lapid earlier today in a press conference, they both say that, we don't want a nuclear Iran and we will stop a nuclear Iran. But I think President Biden's goal or avenue to do that would be more diplomacy. Yair Lapid said, in contrast to that diplomacy is not enough, words are not enough, but you need a strong military option on the table. So that's where Israeli leaders and President Biden would differ.
Now, Chris, of course, this comes at a time when politics in Israel are kind of up in the air with another election looming in November. What is the state of political affairs there in Israel?
Well, right now, Yair Lapid is really a caretaker prime minister. He'll be acting prime minister until November 1st. And that will be when the next elections, I think this will be the fifth election probably in the last 3 years or so. After that, depending on the results of that election, hopefully there'll be a coalition government that will be formed. The latest polls, Tony, indicate that perhaps Benjamin Netanyahu and his Likud party could actually squeak out a 61-seat majority for a coalition. But that's still 4 months away from the election. A lot of things could happen. Things do look well for Benjamin Netanyahu right now, but we'll see what happens. But right now, it's sort of a caretaker government, not a very stable situation when you have threats like a possible and potential nuclear Iran on the horizon.
It's been interesting, Chris, watching some of the reaction to the trip there. In fact, some of the small things, questions raised about President Biden shaking hands there in Israel, trying to use COVID as a cover not to shake hands so that he doesn't have to shake hands when he goes to Saudi Arabia, so that a picture can't be captured with the Crown Prince. What's the expectation from Israel's perspective as the president travels over to Saudi Arabia?
Well, first of all, Tony, there was a lot of talk about the fact that he came out with the idea that he's not going to shake hands with anybody. He came off the plane and he was giving a fist bump to everybody. Then just a few minutes later, he shook hands with Benjamin Netanyahu. And then from there, he's been shaking hands with Holocaust survivors and others. So that really hasn't worked. The expectation right now is that it's going to be probably a tense, maybe awkward and somewhat embarrassing meeting with the Crown Prince, and he really does go hat in hand to Saudi Arabia, looking for more oil production in order to drop the price of gas that you and many others that are watching are paying at the pump in the United States. But there's really a question whether or not, first of all, Saudi Arabia can increase its production. It has about 11 million barrels a day capacity. Right now, it can go up to maybe to 12 million barrels a day, but not sure it can do that or would do that. And it remains to be seen. And some people feel that maybe instead of coming east here to Saudi Arabia, President Biden should have gone to Midland, Texas, South Dakota, or many of the other oil-producing states.
Yeah, we're waiting to see if he appoints an ambassador to Texas to actually go down there and work with them to get some oil, the relief on the gas prices. I want to go back. We just got a couple of minutes left. I want to go back to the issue of Iran, because it would appear to me that this administration is light years apart from what the Israelis want to be the outcome in terms of these conversations and negotiations with Iran.
Very much so. They think diplomacy hasn't worked. While President Biden has done these negotiations for the last 18 months, Iran has really progressed significantly on its ability to enrich uranium, on the verge of weapons-grade uranium, as well as testing ballistic missiles, as well as exporting its brand of terrorism throughout the region. So they're very concerned that what the U.S. is doing now is not enough to stop Iran from either getting a nuclear weapon, and that leaves open the option, Tony, for them. Will they have to go it alone with a military option to try to stop Iran's nuclear program?
Well, it appears that they are not resting in the hopes, even though they want to have America standing with them. It looks like Israel's military is preparing to go it alone if necessary.
If necessary. They have made preparations. They have made public pronouncements. They have done exercises with other countries simulating what a attack on Iran's nuclear facilities would look like. So, no, they're not waiting. It remains to be seen. Probably the biggest question in the Middle East right now, what will happen if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, or whether or not Israel's going to attack. That's sort of the big question right now looming over the Middle East right now, Tony.
Yeah. Chris Mitchell, we're on our way out, up against a break, but quickly, 15 seconds. What's the top prayer point that Christians here in America should be praying for as it pertains to Israel?
Obviously, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Pray that there's no harm come from this visit by President Biden to Saudi Arabia. Pray for wisdom for all the leaders here in the region as they look forward to a perilous time.
All right. Chris Mitchell, always great to see you. Thanks for staying up late and joining us tonight. And we look forward to talking to you again real soon.
Great to be with you, Tony.